Sober on Purpose is the podcast that takes you beyond clean to fulfilling your dreams. Other programs get you sober. We ask what's next. Come thrive with us.
Hello, Sober on Purpose family. It's Tanya.
And Jerry.
And we are here with the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston. But first, before we do anything, if you would subscribe below, that really lights up our faces and helps us keep producing content. So, hey, Jerry.
I was wondering if you were going to do it. You're off tempo on that. Hi, Tanya.
Well, the people who put out our podcast make me want to say, please subscribe. So please do that. So we have Dr. Glenn Livingston with us, and he is part of the Never Binge Again program that he developed himself. I ran into him at least 2 years ago. And the reason I did is my children are now 15 and 17. There's no reason I should be carrying that baby weight. And then my mother passed away at the end of 2020, and I didn't want to put on the extra weight. So what I did was start with Never Binge Again, and it has fully changed my life, the way that I think about food. And I bought the t-shirt, if you can see it.
Nice.
I have my food rules out here, and we'll talk about that as well. But it changed the thinking that I needed to change about food, whereas just a diet plan or a restrictive diet plan was not working. And I went from the highest I had ever been post carrying a child, from 195 after my mother died down to 165. So that's a 30-pound loss. It did not happen overnight. Took me a year plus, but that's how long the program is. So I got support all the way through that. So Dr. Livingston, if you would take it away and let us know more about how you developed the program and your personal journey, we would love it.
I would love to hear, sir, about your credentials also, please.
Well, I'd be happy to talk about all of the above. My credentials are a PhD in clinical psychology. I did not set out to become an eating disorders therapist. I wanted to work with, originally wanted to work with artists and authors and help them overcome creative blocks. But I wound up developing a child and family specialty, and I work with couples and kids, and I had a successful practice on Long Island for a long time. My ex-wife, I was married for 28 years, and she traveled a lot for business. So I had an awful lot of time in my hand. I wound up developing a second career, which, for lack of a better explanation, was mostly doing advertising research for Fortune 100 companies, mostly in the food industry, also in the pharmaceutical industry, a couple of others. And I was on the wrong side of the war. I saw them developing hyper-palatable concentrations of starch and sugar and fat and excitotoxins and salt, and it was all aimed at the bliss point on our reptilian brain without giving us enough nutrition to feel satisfied, which results in addiction. And so the advertising industry was really, really good at convincing us that we needed that stuff, that that's where the survival nutrients were, which is not true usually. And, but most importantly, during this time, I had a serious problem myself. That's why I was not working with eating disorder people, because I wasn't an eating disordered person, past tense, wasn't an eating disordered person, past tense, which is not something you would say in the 12-step programs, but something I adamantly assert. And I spent 25 years trying to solve the eating problem myself by what you'd call a psychological and spiritual journey, like trying to fill the hole in my heart. I figured if I could fill the hole in my heart, then I wouldn't have to fill the hole in my stomach. And I went to the best doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists, and I took medication, and I went to Overeaters Anonymous, and I, went on a spiritual pursuit, and I had psychotherapy, and it was a valuable life in as much as that whole adventure, that whole multi-decade adventure, was very soul enriching. It helped me develop compassion for myself and other people. I think it's a big part of who I am, but it didn't help me with the food. I get a little thinner and a lot fatter, and a little thinner and a lot fatter, with maybe one exception for a couple of years. And ultimately, I realized that it wasn't the right paradigm. There were loving your inner wounded child was kind of setting your lizard brain free to run rampant. So if I can explain that a little bit, it's kind of going on for a little while longer.
So
Please.
yes, please.
Yeah.
So that's what's in my. Let me move my microphone. In my cage is a little lizard. And can you talk about what that looks like for you and what the lizard brain? That's what changed it for me.
This was a key insight for me. Yeah, psychologists have to study just a little neurology, and in part of the work that I was doing with the big companies, I saw that they were targeting the bliss point in the reptilian brain, and they're trying to like stimulate the feast and famine response, the part of us that feels like you need this to survive, right? And that's what those hyperpalatable concentrations of pleasurable substances do. It's kind of like a drug.
Can you give an example of hyperpalatable? What are we looking at?
Well, we didn't have chocolate bars on the savannah. We didn't have Doritos and Pop-Tarts and pizza on the savannah.
The humanity.
I don't think we had food addiction on the savannah either. I don't think that Thag was sitting around talking to Martha and saying, "Thag eat too much mammoth." I think that food addiction is an artifact of the industrial concentration of pleasurable foods. And I'm fully in favor of people's ability to have some of it if they want to, but you should know it's not a natural occurrence, right? And that every time you're looking for love at the bottom of a bag or a box or a container, there's some fat cat in a white suit with a mustache that's laughing all the way to the bank. It's incredibly profitable.
we could be looking at each other, the Heath bar that's in the secret drawer, right?
Yeah. So I remember one of the most profitable insights that a food bar manufacturer had was to take the vitamins out of the bar and put the money into the packaging and say, because the vitamins were making it taste bad. So they made it taste better by taking the vitamins out. And then they fooled us into thinking that the vitamins were there by creating a multicolored, diverse package. Because in nature, you're told to eat the rainbow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you eat a salad with green lettuce and yellow carrots and blueberries and red tomatoes, you're more likely to get a diversity of micronutrients. So your evolutionary brain is set up to say, that's the good stuff, right? That's where I need my survival stuff. But in actual fact, they took it out. They made a hyperpalatable concentration, and then they faked us out into thinking that the micronutrients were there. And I don't mean to single out the food bar manufacturers. This goes on all the way across the industry. They're using plausible deniability. What people don't necessarily want to eat healthy, what they want is plausible deniability. Like I'm having potato chips with vitamin E in them, or it's made with avocado oil, so it's healthy, right? Forget that, fried food is almost always bad for you on 7 different levels. And, the baking or even frying of the potatoes creates acrylamides no matter what kind of oil you're using, and that those are carcinogenic. Forget all that. I've got avocado oil in these ones, and they're better than regular potato chips. That's how people want to eat. That's what the consumer will spend money for plausible deniability. It's like a get out of jail free card that doesn't really get you out of jail. How did I get there?
So we just bought, because we wanted to upgrade our meat. So we just bought from our 4-H club a cow and a pig.
Awesome.
Now, I know that's better than what we could get at the grocery store, but we're still talking a grain-fed red meat substance.
Well, let me jump in. Hold on. So we're talking about an animal that was finished for maybe 50 days on a grass pasture with a grain supplement.
Well,
as opposed to 150 days in a feedlot.
So I really bring this up because Glenn's program does not say you must use this diet. He talks about how are you thinking about food and what are you feeling with these highly palatable substances. He said that earlier, I'm looking for love at the bottom of the chip bag.
Well, I find that I have very serious thoughts about what I think people should be eating, but I don't preach that in the program because it's not really a part of overcoming binge eating. If you are willing to flood your body with nutrition at a slight caloric deficit, you can lose weight and be healthy and stop binging. And I figure that it's much better that I get people to stop binging than get them on the exact right, perfect diet. And I don't really have the expertise. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a dietitian or nutritionist. I don't have the expertise to tell you exactly what to eat. So as long as it's reasonable, and I kind of feel like I wish that everybody would stop arguing about carnivore versus plant-based versus point counting versus calorie counting. And I wish they just eat more whole foods, like get a bunch of the crap out of their diet. Can I circle back to what you were asking me before? I was answering in a kind of a lump.
Please. Yes,
because it's important that you understand how the lizard brain functions, right?
Yeah.
It was loving myself thin was the wrong paradigm because the lizard brain. Let's pretend this is the lizard brain. It looks at something in the environment and it says, do I eat it? Do I mate with it? Or do I kill it? Eat, mate, or kill. It's like a bad college drinking game. What happens on top of that?
Right? Or
I'm so,
run.
yeah. So there's the mammalian brain on top of that that says, wait a minute, before you eat, mate, or kill that thing, what about your family? What about your tribe? What about the people that you love? And then the neocortex says, wait a minute, before you eat, mate, or kill that thing, what about your higher order goals? What about your strategic goals? What about weight loss and fitness and long-term health and everything like that? And so the reptilian brain, which is the seat of the feast and famine response, which is the seat of the biological error that causes you to break your diet when you're standing in front of a chocolate bar at Starbucks, and says just hand over the chocolate and nobody gets hurt. This thing does. No, seriously, this thing doesn't know love. It's wired to try to shut off your mammalian brain and your neocortex, the upper part of yourself that you really value, but it doesn't know love. And so loving yourself then at the moment of temptation is actually kind of relinquishing the mammalian brain and the neocortex and saying, go at it. You must need more. You must need more love. There's some nurturing that you need, which there might have been that started the trigger. But at the moment of impulse, when you're about to do that, your reptilian brain is active. And what you need to do is get back into your rational brain. So there's a big study I did that kind of brought me to this conclusion ultimately, but in the interest of time, I came to the conclusion that it was necessary for me to be more like an alpha wolf in my own mind than to, be a loving grandma, grandpa to my inner wounded child. And if you think about it, when an alpha wolf is challenged for leadership, it doesn't say, oh my goodness, someone needs a hug, right? It growls and it snarls.
No, it's not. So if that young male comes in, the alpha wolf,
it growls and it snarls and it says, get back in line or I'll kill you, right? And so it's just a matter of taking control of your bodily impulses. If I really had to pee right now, I would tell my bladder that, hey, I hear you, man, but I'm in the middle of talking to Tanya and Jerry. It's Sherry, right?
Yeah.
Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry. I'm in the middle of talking to Tanya and Jerry. Can you wait a half hour or 40 minutes and I will attend to the needs? But I take control of when and how it's expressed. I don't ignore my biological needs, but I take control of the context and the way that I express that. Same thing with your reproductive organs. If there's a really attractive person, you just don't go running up and kiss them. There's a way to approach. I actually run the other direction because I'm kind of shy and I have a girlfriend now anyway. But you know what I mean? Like we're already expected to control our biology. And in the absence of controlling our biology, we can get in a lot of trouble. It's inherent in society that we don't act like animals, we act like human beings, right? You can't just express your impulses all the time. Why does it have to be so much different with food? Why do we have to say, I'm powerless over this, I can't control myself, I have to just let go and have the chocolate bar? So I did something kind of crazy for a sophisticated psychologist. And I was not going to be teaching this or promoting it. This was me in my journal trying to figure it out. I decided that I had an inner pig. I was going to call my reptilian brain my inner pig. Now, this was before I was a vegan. I really shouldn't have been. Anyway, that's what I did. I probably should have called it a food monster. I called it my inner pig. And I decided that I needed a very clear line in the sand so that I would know when my pig was trying to get active and cross it. So one of my first rules was I'll never have chocolate on a weekday again. And then if I was in a Starbucks on a Wednesday afternoon and it said, hey, you know what, Glenn, you worked out hard enough. You're not going to gain any weight. One won't hurt. You can always start your diet tomorrow. Besides, chocolate comes from a cocoa bean and that grows on a plant and therefore it's a vegetable.
There you go. Antioxidants. Don't forget that,
right.
And that chocolate bar had blueberries in it too. So it's all good.
Right. Exactly. Plausible deniability. Then I would say, well, wait a minute. That's not me. That's not me. That's my inner pig. Chocolate on a Wednesday is pig slop because I don't eat chocolate during the week, and I don't eat pig slop, and I don't let farm animals tell me what to do.
Can I stop you there? Because one of the things that really caught me was when you said that's not me, and you used the example for most of us robbing a bank. We've already committed that we're not going to do that. Having an affair, we've already committed we're not going to do that. So every time we walk by a bank, we don't go, oh well, maybe. That type of thing. That commitment to who I was really was what started the journey. I had to figure out who I was. So when your pig says, it's got blueberries and all that kind of stuff, coming back to going, no, I'm a person who does not eat chocolate on Wednesdays. That was one of the most helpful pieces of the program.
You know what just keeps coming up into my mind, and even before you brought up the alpha wolf, is the Native American expression of every person has two wolves inside of them. You know, and just for anybody who hasn't heard it, you know, they have two wolves, and one encompasses evil and one encompasses good, and they're constantly at battle. So which one wins? The one you feed, right? And it just seems like that is kind of the overall theme that you just keep going on, because one of the things I would push back on is this idea of that's not me. Well, the reptilian brain is me, but luckily I'm using your analogy here, what's on top is over it. It has the ability to suppress it if I feed that part of myself and keep that reptile in check.
But that's what I'm saying, is that we already do that in many, many places in our lives. We already say that I don't run stoplights, you know, I don't rob banks, I don't have affairs. We just haven't taken it to the point where we're willing to apply it to food.
Consciously and purposely,
To some extent.
Did you hear what he just said? Consciously and purposely.
Yeah. But to some extent, I think even these guys on the World's Biggest Loser and stuff, I mean, they have some regulatory abilities or they'd be dead already, right? It's just they're in a losing battle. They're in the midst of a progressive disease, which they're losing.
Oh, he opened it, Glenn. Now you can talk about the disease model.
Well, can I address a couple of things that you said first, and I will talk about the disease model? Okay. So first of all, character trumps willpower, right? Yeah. Character is what you habitually do in the face of temptation. It's the kind of person that you are. You would never take the waitress's tip, even if you were sat down at the table and she went to get the menus and she hadn't seen that there was a $20 bill there and nobody would see you. There's no video cameras. You still wouldn't do it because you're not that kind of person. You're not a thief. You've met 99% of the people I talk to wouldn't take the money. It's kind of a built-in shortcut in our brain to conserve energy and make decisions for us, so we don't have to wear down our willpower by constantly making other decisions. Character trumps willpower. The kind of person you are trumps temptation. There was a second thing that you said in there, which I thought was okay. In terms of I want to get to that third because that's going to be a longer conversation. The idea that we're separating ourselves into two wolves and making a decision not to feed the evil wolf is true. And it's a place where the physical analogy breaks down a little bit, because really the evil wolf is not just the reptilian brain. We need a lot of the energy that the evil wolf has. So really, we go beyond the physical metaphor and we say that the good wolf, my higher self, is all the thoughts, feelings, impulses, and images that suggest that I will stick to the rule that I previously committed to when I was of sound mind and body and had the fortitude to think it through. And the evil wolf are all those thoughts and feelings and impulses that suggest that I'm going to break it. And in this way, you can start to identify progressively more with the good wolf and develop a character of a good wolf as opposed to the character of the evil wolf. It's just a matter of consciously and purposely separating your thoughts. I don't really think that there's a pig inside me, but at the moment of temptation, you don't have access to your rational brain to go through this long explanation. It's just like, get back in line or I'll kill you. Like, you got to get pissed off and say, get back in line or I'll kill you. Okay. So the idea that there's a progressive, mysterious, chronic disease that's doing push-ups in the closet and getting worse, I've not seen evidence for that. Have you seen evidence for that?
Oh, yeah. Personally, absolutely.
What's the evidence?
Well, personal experience, anecdotal evidence existentially, but personal experience. You know, the cliche goes, you know, as you were alluding to, that your addiction it may feel like it's gone, but it's just in the shadows doing push-ups, waiting for a moment of weakness, right? So in regard to the chocolate bar, you know, I've got my characters all in check, and then I get divorce papers in the mail. And all of a sudden, that may be the time for that inner pig to take a jump. Doesn't mean he's going to win, but it means you may experience a strike at that time. It could also be on the opposite side. You know, in recovery, I would hear people a lot of times opining about they don't know if they could be sober if they had a tragic death to a child or if their wife died or et cetera, et cetera. And I would always chime in and go, that stuff doesn't really scare me. What scares me is winning the lottery. Then it's, well, I can see that inner pig absolutely coming out possibly. Mm-hmm. So it could go either way.
So I think language is important. I think language is important because what you're describing is that there is such a thing as addiction, and that once you've established a pattern of neurological gratification and you've dug a lot of very deep grooves, that it's fairly easy to reestablish that pattern. So I tell people, once you get free of a particular substance, like I don't eat chocolate at all anymore. I don't require that my clients do that, but I don't do it anymore at all. It just doesn't work for me. Once you get free, once you've escaped prison, run far away from the prison walls. Don't entertain the idea of going back, because you probably will be immediately re-addicted. The pathways have been dug, and it's easy to reestablish them if you let that happen. So I totally and thoroughly agree. Like Jack Trimpey says, if you're addicted to alcohol, you should quit and avoid it like cyanide for the rest of your life, like not even a drop. But that's different than saying that it's a disease, that it gets worse, that you could identify the disease in the course. You could identify the results of drinking in the course, but you couldn't identify a pathogen or something that would progressively get worse in and of itself. The reason that I think that's important is that if you think it's a disease, then you're going to cultivate a sense of fear, and you're going to feel like you have to be dependent upon meetings and sponsors and and really kind of subjugate yourself to a whole way of life that I don't really think is necessary. And I think that it shrinks us in many ways. I think there are good things that happen in the 12-step programs. I think that there's a lot of spiritual development and self-reflection and socialization and responsibility taking and things like that. But I think that it's based upon I think it's based upon an exaggeration and a falsehood, which leads people to sacrifice their autonomy in ways that aren't good for them, and it leaves them more vulnerable, not less vulnerable. Because the other thing that happens is that if you believe that it's a chronic, mysterious, progressive disease and you make a mistake, then you feel like, well, now I've fallen into some netherworld where I can't control my hands and my arms and my legs and my mouth and my tongue, and I'm just going to have to keep drinking or eating or using until it rides itself out or until I find a bottom. And I think that that's dangerous. I think that
I would agree with everything you said. I would agree. I think so. Disease is thrown around in the traditional big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but so is allergy, right? Defined as hypersensitivity, which the big book makes pretty clear that as these, I'm gonna extrapolate here because this is what I hear when I read it. As these neurological pathways get carved out, we are increasing our hypersensitivity to the ability to become entrenched in addiction again, whether it be alcohol or, as the big book says, alcohol in a pill form. They didn't have all the fun stuff that we have today, like the stuff that I got to experiment with in the 90s and such. But I've always agreed with allergy more so. I saw your cat run away in the background. I am violently allergic to cats.
But he loves them.
Yeah. I love a lot of things that are bad for me. Yeah. Horses and cats, violently allergic, bordering on anaphylactic responses. Right.
Wow. So not over Zoom though, right? Are you okay?
No, and I want to pet him.
Yeah.
No, he really does. And we lived on a horse ranch for a long time. And he would have petted your cat, but he would pay for it.
So my point is, can I, and I don't know, I've heard people who don't have allergies tell me upside down and backwards that you can absolutely overcome that with willpower. And I always make sure to tell them, you clearly have no, real allergies that you know of at this point. So anyway, my point is, can I overcome that through psychological psychotherapy? Personally, with my experience, I would say I try not to put God in a box, so to speak. So I would say I don't know, but I've tried many things, and no medication, no exposure levels, no therapy thus far can allow me to overcome that. So I can personally make a solid connection between that and addiction. And I'm going to go one more thing. I'm supposed to be here just for eye candy, Doc, but here I go. This idea of the wolves and evil versus good, words do matter. I completely agree with you. They're powerful, right? And the good and evil was an oversimplification. So as you get more nuanced into the 12 steps, and I'm trying to segue there, you see what I'm doing here. You start to realize, I should say, that it's not about right or wrong or good or bad. It's if you step away and you take a theological viewpoint, maybe you can start to see that. But what ultimately it really boils down to is the difference between selfishness and self-centeredness. And I want to just break that out, and I swear I'll shut up. So selfishness is the idea that everything we do is self-interested. If I put money in the tithing jar at church, it's because I will get a better feeling from giving that money, possibly having other people watch me put it in there, but whatever reasoning, than I will from having it in my wallet. If I take a bullet for my child, it's because I will experience less pain with that bullet in my body than I would with it in theirs. Everything we do is self-centered or selfish. The breakout between self-centeredness is this idea that I'm the only one who benefits, right? I have an affair. I benefit at the expense of my family life, at the expense of my relationship with my wife. I have a king-size Heath bar last night at around 11 o'clock, theoretically, hypothetically. Yeah. Who benefits, right? Well, I guess you could say the fat cat with the money bag like in the Monopoly game, but me and me only. My body doesn't benefit. My family doesn't benefit. My ability to retire doesn't benefit. The reptile does, the inner pig. And, you know, I don't want to go. I'm done. That's all I got.
Tell him what the inner pig is saying when he gets the Heath bar. That blew my mind. As I mentioned, I lost over 30 pounds by using Glenn Livingston's method. No more donuts, no more refined sugar, but that's not forever. I can still eat it if I wanted to, and if it was something I wanted to move forward with. So we are doing a second episode with Glenn. Stay tuned. Be sure and subscribe below. It really is a program that works.
You, beloved listener, are creative, resourceful, and whole. Do you want to add more purpose to your sober journey? Do you want to make room for the new and make your dreams a reality? Apply today for a dream session. Go to tanyagioia.com. That's TANYAGIOIA.com and apply today. Let's get you dreaming about your new purpose.